Well, Donald Trump reportedly planning to urge Volodymyr Zelenskyy to surrender all of the eastern Ukrainian regions of Donetsk and Luhansk in exchange for Russia agreeing to freeze the rest of the front line. Luhansk is now almost completely under Russian control. Ukraine still holds about 30% of Donetsk, which includes some important cities. So this has come at a great cost, with tens of thousands of Ukrainian lives lost. Together, the Luhansk and Donetsk regions are known as Donbas, and both are rich in minerals and industry. So let's take a closer look at what's happening in Donetsk and Luhansk, which Russia wants Ukraine to give up. Frank Ledwidge is a military expert and senior lecturer in strategic studies at Portsmouth University in the UK. Welcome back, Frank. Why is Russia so determined to hang on to these areas?
Good morning, Phil. Donetsk and Luhansk, which the Russians and most people now, I think, call Donbas, are two of the four provinces formerly claimed by Russia in early 23 as part of their sovereign territory. But the issue goes back a long way further back than that. The Donbas, Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts are the industrial, or were the industrial heartland in terms of resources such as coal and minerals. So there's that sort of material element, but there's also the emotional element from both sides of those two provinces, which are mostly Russian speaking, which is not to say that those provinces are, or oblasts are, necessarily a majority Russian sympathizing.
And Ukraine only controls about a quarter of its eastern Donetsk region. Would Ukrainian army actually be capable of retaking the whole region, or at least hanging on to those areas they still control?
Slightly more than a quarter, but yes, the point remains. The answer is that they have been fighting with huge determination to hold on over the last 3 years. And we started talking about Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, which are cities or towns in Donetsk 3.5 years ago, and the Ukrainians have held on to those and continue to hold on to them. There's also Konstantinivka and Pokrovsk, which we've heard about more recently. The fact is the Ukrainian army now is effectively in an operational withdrawal and has been for more than 2 years now. So it's fighting, it's conceding land. It will not be able to take any of that land back, but equally it will not give up those fortress cities, as they call them, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Kupiansk, Pokrovsk, without a big fight. And those fights are going on now, by the way, as those towns are invested or become close to being invested.
OK, so now there's all this talk about swap of territories. If there was a deal to swap territories, how would that be guaranteed?
The model, I think, that senior Ukrainian officials are looking at quietly but firmly is something like we've seen in Korea, where North Korean aggression is contained by the threat of force, deterrence, as they say, by denial, making sure they simply can't do it, and by punishment. If they do it, we're going to make it very painful for you. And that's where security guarantees come in. I think at senior Ukrainian officials, to my great surprise, actually, expressed the willingness to accept the military reality on frozen lines, secured by the West, if that can be done. What they won't do is concede any more land. Too many lives have been lost for that. And I think that view is reflected in the wider population. That there's a robust realism, but there are lines that will not or cannot be crossed.
On the ground, would it be fair to say that as things currently stand, nothing has changed despite all this diplomatic activity, and there's been no let-up in Russia's attacks on Ukraine?
That's right. The signature attacks on Kiev, on some of the cities, have lessened in intensity, although I note there was a brutal attack yesterday on Kharkiv in the east. But of course, every day, the fighting on the front line, costing hundreds of lives on both sides every week, has continued. And those battles are going on as we speak, ferocious battles, actually, as the line goes forward, as the Russians take land, and as costly Ukrainian counterattacks take back that land. So that has not stopped and will not stop until there's some form of peace agreement, whether that's a ceasefire or a larger agreement. The two sides are not going to stop fighting down there. And the costs in an attritional war, that's what this is. It's not a war of maneuver, will continue to be very great.
OK, thanks for that, Frank. Military analyst Frank Ledwidge.
Thank you, Phil.
Here's a look now at some more stories making headlines. Ukraine says an overnight Russian drone strike in Kharkiv has killed 5 people and injured more than a dozen others. The attack targeted a residential building in the city, which is near the Russian border. Hours earlier, the city was hit by a missile. Strikes were also reported on cities across Ukraine. Russian authorities say the death toll following an explosion at a production facility has risen to 20. Scores of others were injured in Friday's blast in the Ryazan region, about 200 kilometres southeast of Moscow. The regional governor said a workshop fire triggered the explosion.